And welcome back, everyone, to another One Up XP Show podcast. Today, we continue our trip around the Grand Rapids area, and today we are sitting down with a good buddy. I call him a good buddy. I've talked to him twice, but he seems like a good buddy. That's how he makes you feel. But a really respected college here and really respected esports program. We'll get into that in just a bit, but first, we got to hit that intro.
Here we go! Okay, let's go!
There it is. The One Up XP Show podcast for you. And today I sit down with Colin Graham, the head coach of Davenport Esports, Davenport University Esports program. Welcome, Colin. Glad to have you on the show, brother.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. And, I've kind of hit all the Grand Rapids area at one time here, and I'm glad to have you. I've grown up going down and visiting Grand Rapids and knowing of Davenport. I had friends play hockey at Davenport. But you guys have a really good esports program, which we're going to talk about today. And we were talking before the show, a lot of CSGO respect there as well. But we'll get into that in a little bit. But let's talk about you first. And I met you first, and I met you about a week ago, sat you down, talked to you briefly, kind of got our backgrounds on each other. But you have a really interesting background. It's very different than any other esports coach or program director or anybody that I've talked to before. So let's start with Colin, how you started in video games and how you got to Davenport, brother.
Yeah, so I mean, very stereotypical, I guess, cliche. I've been a gamer since I was a kid. I got my first SNES when I was 6 years old and got really big into like playing JRPGs. I had a lot of friends that played video games, so we would go over to each other's houses and play like Smash Bros, Mortal Kombat.
Oh, yeah.
GoldenEye was a big part of like my early childhood. And then video games just always kind of been a part of my life, high school, whatever, going to college. I got dropped from Purdue University for playing too many video games. I was up to about 6 a.m. playing Halo and Elder Scrolls Oblivion. And then I kind of shifted my focus to doing traditional sports. So
Okay.
I was gung-ho, like, I'm going to be a football coach. That's what I'm going to do. That's my life's passion. This is after trying to become an engineer, mechanical and electrical, and like, oh, I'm going to be an economics major. I was like, no, I'm going to be a football coach. So I talked to a lot of 18-year-olds, like, I don't know what I do. I was like, buddy, I didn't know what I was going to do till I was 23 when I decided I wanted to be in coaching.
Right.
So,
And mind you, you didn't have any background in football. You didn't play.
no, I went to a small private high school. Our entire high school's population was 73 kids.
Wow. Okay.
So we like football wasn't an option.
Right.
So I really started doing like independent research. I was all over Reddit all the time, kept up on everything football. And then when I moved up to Michigan in 2013, I started taking classes at Western. I started taking some coaching classes there. They have a coaching minor.
Yep.
And they had a coaching clinic for Western Michigan football. Went to that. During this time, I was pursuing an internship at Kalamazoo Central High School, and I met the head coach at that particular coaching clinic. So the way I got into football coaching, which is kind of like the basis for how I build off of everything, was I talked to him. He talked to the principal. He told the principal, look, I've got this kid. He's never played football before in his life, but he's a grinder. He puts in the time, the effort. He's doing things independently that I can't get my coaches to do if I pay for them to go.
Right.
I think he would be a good opportunity and a good option to bring in to teach from a very base level. So I did that for 3 years. I was an offensive and defensive line coach at Kalamazoo Central High School, the JV level. My third year, I transitioned to a defensive coordinator position.
Nice.
At the same time, I had picked up an assistant athletic directing position at that same school under the suggestion of our head coach. He was like, I think you'd be really good at this. I was doing all the social media for the football program. I was doing fundraising. And he was like, you do a lot of admin work. I think this would be good for you. I know that you're trying to go to school. This will help pay for some of your bills. So I did that. Did that for about 6-7 months. I happened to be sitting in an office and I overhear our head AD, Dylan Patterson, talking to a student, and he mentions e-gaming. And I'm like, okay, e-gaming, I know esports. I was familiar with League of Legends. I've been playing it on and off since season 2. I knew what esports was. And I asked myself, I said, I wonder if there's like a high school esports league. Lo and behold, it's literally called High School Esports League.
Right.
We had a gaming club on campus. I got in touch with the teacher that was overseeing that, Carlo de Los Angeles. He became one of my coaches at Davenport and is now the director over at Albion. We got it all together in about 2.5-ish months. We had everything going. We were competing and good to go. Then from there, kind of fizzled. I think I
What
had too much to do.
what
Go
year
ahead.
was this?
2018.
So
Everything's a blur.
were you playing Adam? Because he was a high school coach at St. Mary's, I believe.
He was at Grand Rapids West Catholic.
Yeah.
We literally started basically within a month of each other.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. I don't think we ever played them because they were more about Rocket League, and our guys
okay.
we played Rainbow Six and we played Smash.
Yep.
West Catholic didn't do Rainbow Six, and then I don't think they had a Smash team.
Got you.
And then we also had a student that was like top 50 in Injustice 2. He was really good at it. But yeah, no, we started like, it was a weird thing. There was a lot of like high school teachers just kind of cropped up right around the same time, right around 2018.
Yeah.
And it was because we also saw what was happening at the college level. Like
Right.
Boise State was in full swing. Maryville was good to go. Robert Morris had been doing it for about 4 years. Then we're like, oh, there's all these schools, and there's a bunch of opportunities for students to get scholarships to go to college.
Right.
So yeah, we started that. It fizzled out after the first spring season. Carlo went to Western. He started coaching Overwatch and Smash. I went back to doing my duties as assistant AD. They kind of ramped up. He was like, the AD said that he wanted me to do more. So I started doing more of the social media. I started taking care of like being like a low-key webmaster. I was taking care of like emails, helping with setup and tear down of events and like football things when we started the year. So I was just busy, right?
A lot of hats, man. A lot of hats.
At the same time, I'm still working my morning job at FedEx. Like I have been working at that point for like 7 years. So did that. 2019, no. Fall of 2018, yes, fall of 2018. Because I'm trying to.
Dude, you got a lot of things.
Yeah, I got married in 2019. So in fall of 2018, I get a random Twitter DM from Yellow Flag Productions, i.e. Esports Michigan. They were looking for an esports manager for a League of Legends tournament that they were doing. They had actually approached Adam, but Adam was a teacher at West Catholic. He was doing the esports thing there. He was actually at that point, he didn't tell anyone, but he was applying for the Aquinas job during that time period. So it made sense. He was like, I can't do it. I've got other things going on.
Right.
I think he was in the middle of master's classes as well, because he was getting his master's at Aquinas.
Yep.
So I got that gig, ran that for 7-8 months. We did the largest high school League of Legends tournament at that time. We had 54 teams across 4 different states.
Blows my mind.
Over $500,000 in scholarships were available.
That's awesome.
Specifically to Lawrence Tech, but it was great. It was a great opportunity. Allowed me to get my feet wet, do a little bit of TO work, learn how to. I had people that I worked with that were considered like my subordinates. They were my employees for a little bit. So learning how to delegate responsibilities as needed. And then March of 2019, the Davenport job opened up for an assistant coach. And I'm sitting, I remember I'm sitting at a basketball game at Kalamazoo Central. My wife texted me. She goes, "Hey, there's this job I found on Hitmarker. Do you want me to apply for it for you?" I was like, "Yeah, sure.
Sure.
Like, sounds great to me." So she applied, and then I got in touch with the current or now previous head coach, Andrew, to bring him to Kalamazoo Central to do a recruiting trip and talk to the students there. During that time, my ulterior motive was, I'm going to talk to this guy. I'm applying for the gig there. I want to learn more about the thing. I want to possibly get a job there. So this is me like talking to a potential boss of mine. So we sit down, we talk for about an hour or whatnot. And then I eventually come up to DU, interview goes well. He was like, "Yeah, we're going to hire you." So this is March, April of 2019. I am working at FedEx. I'm working at Kalamazoo Central. I'm working at Yellow Flag. And now I'm an assistant coach at Davenport. So I'm holding down 4 jobs for about a month and a half.
So that's a lot of hats.
Yeah.
Big hats though too, you know.
Yeah.
They say small hats.
I mean, it was I was a grinder, right? Like I wanted to make sure that I was
it fits your personality.
I wanted to get where I wanted to go. And I try, like, if I see an opportunity, I try not to pass it up, because if it seems like it's good and then I pass it up, like sometimes you're wondering what if I had done that, right? So May rolls around, I'm married. I am getting ready to wrap up everything at Yellow Flag. I'm having loose conversations with Kalamazoo Central where there may be a full-time gig for me starting next fall. A lot of things are looking pretty good. Andrew calls me, he goes, "Hey, I'm moving to the West Coast. My wife found a better job. Do you want to take over the program?" And I'm like, "Well, I mean, in the interview, I had said, couple of years, maybe 3, 4 years, whatever. I want to run my own program. That's kind of the dream. So yeah, sure. I guess it's a little accelerated, but let's make it happen. So he's like, yeah, makes sense. Did a quick sit down with my direct report. A lot of it came down to I was there, I was qualified. It just made a real ease of a transition between one person to the other, especially with recruiting metrics that were going on. Because you don't want to go through another 3, 4 month process, and now it's beginning the school year and you've hit none of your metrics, and you don't have a program. So it was easy to bring me in, and so I said, "Yep, I'll do that." Recruited a total of 22 students in about 2.5 months. So between May and August, I had hit my goal. So they were like, "Oh, just do the best you can. We understand 20 is a lot, but it's May, and most kids have already found their schools." Like, yeah, so my thought process was we're going to be super aggressive. We're going to offer 8 games out the gate. We're going to do League of Legends, Overwatch, Rocket League, CSGO, Smash. And because Andrew had recruited a couple prior to me, Rainbow Six, because he had recruited a couple students for that. I didn't like Fortnite, so I did Apex Legends. And we got interest from students, so we also offered Call of Duty. We really leaned into first-person shooters, and the conversation with my boss was, if my coaching mantra is using esports as a platform to offer opportunities to students who wouldn't have them through traditional sports, I've said that until I'm blue in the face, that we are shooting ourselves in the foot if we don't offer these games. Yes, I won't offer something like Mortal Kombat because I understand the stigma around it. But there are students that want to go to college, they want to get a degree, they want to be involved in competition. We can provide that to them as long as we can get over the violence in video games aspect and offer a first-person shooter that they're excited about. So we offered 8 titles. I had 22 students that I recruited. We had them in 2021 that were on campus that filled out the rest of our rosters. So the school had budgeted for 20 students. My first year roster was about 42, 43.
Wow.
And that was with me and 2 assistant coaches running 43 students. We had practices 5 nights a week. We staggered practices. So half of the students had Monday, Wednesday, Friday. The other half had Tuesday, Thursday. It was 9 total hours of practice every week. Plus, like, it's sports, right? So you expect them to have some individual practice as well, where they go home. They're going to play the game anyway.
Yeah, you can't stop them.
Yeah, so use it as a structured time to get something done and to continue to get better. So yeah, like that's where we got in 2019, and then here we are today with potentially we missed out on a national championship opportunity, unfortunately, but we have another shot at one this Saturday
with the JV CSGO team. So when did CSGO hit your guys' library of games?
So it was year 1. We had a couple students that came in. And CSGO was actually going through a lot of shifts. First year, it was a lot of students that I think and this is an issue with esports as a whole, so I don't blame anyone for this, where they want to come in, they understand they can get a scholarship, and they just want to play CSGO with their buddies. And they want to compete. And so the idea of this is very structured. We're going to do X, Y, and Z on these days at these times, and this is how everything's going to run. Whereas like, nah, we want to pug or do pickup games. And we want to hang out, and then we'll have our competitions when we have them, and then we'll compete. And if we win, we win. If we don't, we don't. So first year was a little rough, where we did okay. We were very middle of the road. It's not like the guys slacked off. They did everything they were supposed to do, and they showed up for all their practices. But I think the development was just a little slow. I think that was because we didn't have anyone on the roster that was extremely serious or could throw their weight around enough about being serious about the game.
The talent just wasn't there yet.
Yeah. I mean, it's not to say that they were untalented.
Right. It's just you weren't that national championship contender talent just yet. And it makes a difference when you have the assistant coaches, or you go through the structure of, like you said, with VODs and practices. And like when we were talking with your JV team, and we'll get into that a little bit later, but when you have nothing but VODs for a week, and you're looking at a certain map that you might struggle at, but the other team might be better at. It's completely different when you have a structure like that, where you just sit down and just like throw the game on and you're just competing. Completely different. And it's the same way in traditional sports. Yeah, so I mean, it doesn't surprise me. First years, there's going to be woes with the first year. I mean, that just goes for any game or title that very rarely do you see a team come out of the gate first year and just walk like that. That doesn't happen.
It's tough.
Yeah, it's very, very tough, especially in CSGO, which is a very very foundation based game. Like it's been there for so long. It is a core esports game. So yeah, there's a little bit to it when I don't expect somebody to come out of the gate year 1 and just run away with it. But let's talk achievements for Davenport. So obviously
Yep.
we've gotten some. We know you guys missed out with the varsity team this weekend. You lost to Drexel in 3 maps.
Yep.
You swept them the first one, kind of lost a little bit on the second one, then almost came back on the third one, which was really cool to watch. But let's talk achievements overall at Davenport. You guys have a very historic program there. I mean, you've been around a long time. So what do you have for achievements there in Davenport, if you can remember them all?
Right. So I mean, they're kind of here and there. So the first achievement that we really had was year one, our League of Legends team. We entered in GG leagues. It was a fall league. We didn't really have any other options during that time frame, so we won Division B. Our
Mhm.
guys played their hearts out. We had an in-person land for it. Unfortunately, it came with a little bit of an asterisk. The second best team could not come down. They were from Michigan Tech.
Ah,
It's a long drive.
yeah, it is.
So they were like, "Oh, it's in person and not online. We're not going to make it."
Right.
So we ended up playing Eastern. We won that. We've had a couple really close calls in different tournaments where we finished top 4 nationally in Smash last year during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Really anchored by the fact that we had a top 50 in the world PGR player for our Smash team. His name was
Wow.
he went by Best Nest. He's changed multiple times. He's Send now.
Mhm.
Really great kid. And I think the only reason that we lost was one. University of Texas Dallas was so stacked.
Oh, really?
I mean, they were stacked. And also we leaned a lot on Best Nest as our best player, so we
Right.
used him a bit as a crutch. CSGO has kind of run away with a lot of things where we finished third in NACE last fall.
Mhm.
We finished third in NACCS last spring.
Mhm.
Now our varsity team has finished second in NACE this fall. Obviously, we talked about that. We missed out on a national championship chance,
Right.
which is unfortunate, but I just don't think it should overshadow the fact that like we made it that far.
Oh, yeah.
That's an
You
achievement in
guys,
of itself.
you guys were number 1 on the polls all year,
Oh yeah.
right? Yeah. I mean, you guys had a great team.
And I think that's what fed it to a little bit like the personal disappointment was like we came in as a heavy favorites.
Right.
That was expected for us to win.
Mhm.
And so I felt like we didn't live up to expectations, but we're the first college team ever to win main. So that's in like the semi-pro scene. We won ESEA main. We actually peaked top 15 nationally amongst all CS teams. So that includes your pro teams all the way down. We were
Oh,
top
wow.
15.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. We have made advanced playoffs with that roster, which is really good in our first season in advanced. This is the furthest any of these students have gone in
Mhm.
their competitive careers. So we're really trying to it's uncharted waters for everyone.
Right.
This is something that we've never done before. We don't know how to really go about it. We're doing the best we can. Our Rocket League team this year during the fall, they went 38-6.
That's a
So
dang good record.
I equate them so in traditional sports. If you think about a team that goes 10-2 but misses out on the conference championship type of deal,
Right.
where you're beating really everyone except for someone that you shouldn't be beating. So we're losing to Division 1 schools that just have more people and more firepower than
Right.
us. But I mean, you're winning 80% of your games.
Yeah.
That in and of itself is an achievement.
Yeah.
Our Overwatch team was a little stagnant for this year, but I think year one we surprised a lot of people their first couple of years where we punched above our weight class pretty often.
Right.
I had feedback from other directors like, we just played you guys. You did wonderful. I was really surprised in some of the strategies you guys used. On paper, we should have beaten you, but you beat us
Right.
because you guys you thought outside the box and you did things to your strengths.
Right.
Our Apex team has been pretty solid, at least first year. Last year, when esports students seem to get a little older, when like when the internships come around, it's
Right.
about time to graduate. I think some of them are like, I have other responsibilities,
Right.
and we ended up sitting for the last semester for not
Apex.
this semester, but the semester prior for Apex, because
Mhm.
one of our players, he has a full-time internship. He's
Yeah.
working 40 plus hours a week, plus he was going into grad school, and like he's just trying to be a human being as well, and that's a time sink in and of itself.
Right.
And so like you run into that when like the seniors come around, they're like, I've been doing this a while. I've got other responsibilities because I'm not going pro,
Right.
so I need to get ready for life.
Right.
And
And
so
sometimes life doesn't involve those video games.
yeah,
A
which is
lot
fair.
of kids are getting degrees that have nothing to do with video games. So I mean,
Yeah.
it makes complete sense. Like if I had an internship, if I was on an esports team and there's a meteorology internship that popped up, I'd have to take that internship because you know what? That's where my degree's at. That's what I'm going to be doing. Yeah, video games might be there rolling down the line a little bit, or something might open a little bit later. But you and I know if that door opens and presents itself, you got to take it.
Yeah. And I think, the goals of the program aren't, yes, we want to win, we want to be competitive, and we want to
Right.
do all these fantastic things. But also, like, we're here to prepare these students for life,
Right.
for what's going to happen after video games. The percentages for esports are just as bad as they are for things like football, where it's like 1% of players will
Correct.
make it.
Yeah.
And kudos to the ones that do, and I wish them the most success, but there's a lot of students that won't.
Right.
So we need to make sure that they have that important piece of paper that they need to be successful at the next level,
Right.
wherever that may be.
Correct. 100%. I mean, that's what the kids are there for. They're first academic and then athletics.
Yeah.
And, it's just like any other sport, any traditional sport, there's very small percentages that go on and make it to pros, the top tier pros, but there's also different tier of pros. There's organizations, there's ways that you can make money off of this.
Yeah.
But you know what? That is also a longer, harder road. And some may say, well, you know what? I have this job lined up for me after school, and he gets that job after school. Guess what? Your goal is complete. Yeah, it's, kind of upsetting that he couldn't make it in the playoff bit or in the professional biz of video games, but that just goes for any traditional sport, But
Yeah.
we're here to get these kids ready for life, out the door, and then, get that degree in hand and get a job, and then they're on with their life. And some that might involve video games down the road somewhere. But
Yeah.
at that time, that's what they were working for. And that's your ultimate goal as a coach.
And hope.
And yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
And hopefully
exactly what it is.
they look back at Davenport and they're like, oh yeah, I had a really great time there. Because I think, we said, yeah, they didn't go pro. Sometimes that's not even their original goal.
Right.
Sometimes, like, esports, they're good at it, or they're good enough at it that it lowers their cost of attendance. So because we all know college is extremely
Oh,
expensive.
yeah.
It makes it cheaper for them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, a positive experience where they come in, they found something that was fulfilling that, they can look back on fondly. Like, I think that's a win in of itself.
Very much so. And we talked about, your achievements with the CSGO team, and we mentioned the Davenport Jv Team, which we're checking out down here, their latest round with K-State, which you guys beat this weekend. And now you guys have the opportunity of a national title here this upcoming weekend, which is the weekend of the 10th and 11th, I do believe. Yep. So if you see this later, which I believe it's next week, we'll already know what happens, and I'll give a little disclaimer when we highlight it in the show. But yeah, you guys have a heck of a JV team going here, and you have a chance for a national title. You equate it to kind of like a national title at the D2 level, where the varsity is like a D1 level. But regardless, I mean, that's a huge thing. That's nothing to scoff at. I mean, that's a national title.
Yeah, I mean, we're playing University of Missouri. I mean, that's a Division I Power 5 school in the grand finals. It's not like, we're playing, Sister Marie's little school of the poor. Like, we're playing a household name. We're playing an SEC school.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, there should be nothing taken away from the magnitude of this achievement for these guys. And they've come a long way. I mean, I think our caster had commented during our match against K-State, is like, this doesn't look like a team that should have been an 8 seed coming in, because we beat the number 1 seed in RIT, or Rochester Institute of Technology. We beat their white team. They were the number 1 seed. K-State was the number 2 seed. The only reason that we weren't higher is because we lost a game week 2 to like the school of the Colorado School of the Mines.
Mm-hmm.
And we were a completely different team back then. It's because we've taken that very traditional approach to how we practice. It's very structured. It's not just scrim. It's VOD review, it's scrimmages, it's doing independent work on a server that one of our students is kind enough, he pays for access to a server.
Nice.
Go in there, work on the strategy. They have a bit of a buddy system. We're like, hey, you're my person to do this, that, and the other thing.
Right.
And they do that, and it's very structured, and it's worked, and they communicate very well together. They trust each other. They've grown so much. I was like, I'm so surprised how much you guys have grown over the course of over 3 months.
Yeah.
They beat a varsity, or they took it to map 3 against a varsity team in a charity tournament. That we beginning the season, we would have just gotten they would have wiped the floor with us.
Yeah.
But we came down to a 1v3 clutch situation where one of our players in 07 almost clutched it out to keep the dream alive. And I told him afterwards, I got in our Discord server, said, you guys should not be disappointed with how you finished. You guys did a fantastic job. That was a team that beginning of the year would have been so much more difficult for you guys to play into, and you took it right up to the very end. So you
Yeah.
guys should be extremely proud of yourselves.
Yeah, it's a huge thing, and if anybody catches it, make sure you go check it out and check the VOD out, because I'm sure it will be done by the time this podcast rolls around. But hopefully, we can be celebrating Davenport national titles for their JV team in CSGO. And if you don't know what CSGO is, I should say it is an economy-based 5v5 kind of like search and destroy. Best of 6, or was it best of 31 rounds?
First to 16,
First
best of
to
30.
16. Yeah, it was something like that. Yeah, I knew it was something like that. I played a little bit of it. I kind of got deep into it a few years ago, and then I was just like, man, this is kind of taking up a lot of my life, because it is fun to play. But it has been around a very long time, and it is a staple to many esports programs in general. But let's talk about the overall goals for Davenport. And we've talked about it. You want to get the kids in the door. You want to get them prepared for life. You want to get them out the door for what they're preparing for in life. But, you are a coach. You are talking esports. But what are your goals for the kids there at Davenport?
I think we've kind of covered, like, really just growth, helping them. Like, I know when I was an 18-year-old kid, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life.
Right.
I had very limited social skills. I was fairly sheltered, and that was my own fault. Not any fault of my parents. They wanted me to get out and be social, but I was like, no, I'm going to stay inside and play video games all day. So we want them to come in and learn those soft skills that you get through any other traditional sport, so they can communicate with each other. They can communicate in the professional world. They can communicate with employers. They can do whatever they need to do. They can be responsible. They can be accountable for their actions. We want to make sure they come in, they get the grades so they can stay in school, so we can continue to work with them. We hold them to a 2.5 GPA minimum to compete, because my belief is in NCAA is a 2.0. It's not that hard to get a 2.5. Go to class, do your homework. In some situations, it does come with a little asterisk where there's some students who just can't cut it. And it comes down to get a 2.0. If you're doing your absolute best, I'm not gonna crucify you for not getting a 2.5. You are actually trying. You're putting in the effort. Sometimes you just come up short. Right. And I think, my mom was an educator. I've always grown up with an educator's household. And I blame her for me getting into coaching. But you have to be aware that sometimes kids just can't hack it in some way, shape, or form. And the only thing you can do is be proud of them for the effort that they put in, and that they're trying their best. It's all you can really expect out of people. People can't be perfect. No one is perfect. Right. Just do the best that you humanly can. If you're not doing the best that you can, then there's another conversation. Right. But if you're like, coach, like, I just can't do it. I'm putting in all this work and all this effort. I'm putting hours into this homework. I'm just not making the grade. Right. That's understandable. That happens. I think on a competitive level, the goal is always a national championship. University of South Carolina, when Steve Spurrier was there, they used to have milestones. So the first one was beat your rivals. Then it was like go 6-6, win a division championship, win a conference championship, and then it's national. So it's incremental. It's in like, little steps, but your end goal is always to win the highest accolade you can, get that national championship. And if you do, you do. If you don't, you don't. Yeah. And then obviously student experience, create an inclusive and diverse atmosphere where students come in and they feel comfortable. I know, being a gamer and interacting with so many students over my past 2.5, 3 years, a lot of them really, especially when they're high school, didn't really have a place where they fit in. Right. So this is kind of like them finding their people, like-minded individuals where they can have conversations. They can learn about each other. They can make lifelong connections where, sometimes your high school friends are the best friends you always have the rest of your life. But in my experience, it's usually the ones you meet in college, because you're a little more mature and you're not forced to be in the same room as people all the time anymore. Like when you're in classrooms in high school, like you choose to be around them, especially even in your free time. Right. So they may be finding people that, are their best men at their weddings or bridesmaids, or, however it is. These are those lifelong connections that will follow them throughout life. Yep. So yeah, I mean, competitively, it's always, we want to win. Right.
But I think a lot of people don't realize that, especially with esports in general, is those soft skills, man. There's a group of people, whether, it's nice to point them out or not, but there's a group of people through high school that come out that just don't have those skills, and they're not going to be on the traditional sports teams. Yeah. But when you offer something like esports, these are probably the kids that were playing video games quite a bit after school, and if they had the opportunity to do that in school, that's probably where they would have been. Now, when you talk college, yeah, some of these kids probably didn't have high school esports athletics. So when they get to college, they're like, oh, I can play video games here. And, I'm decent at it. They go in, they learn those soft skills. They realize that they can be part of this team and actually really integral part of this team. And they build those, not just soft skills, but life skills, man. Like a lot of those kids just don't have the opportunities or maybe don't feel comfortable in the opportunities that a lot of us get in high school to build those soft skills. They build them with what they're given in college. And that's usually for those kids, some sort of video game or esports outlet. And that's really what I think a lot of people just don't realize. Like it's a huge social interaction. And when you have that opportunity in college, it just sets you up for the rest of your life because a lot of those kids just don't know it,
Yeah. And that's something I've talked about with high schools about too, that are trying to embrace or adopt esports.
Right.
Like you should be doing this because this is what all your students get through the traditional sports. It's the same thing for esports.
Exactly. And I've talked to a few high school programs now, and there's more popping up, which is great to see. But it's those circle of kids that they find a coach or they find someone who enjoys games after work, and they're like poking them, hey, what if we had that here, and the coach is like, yeah, let's take it to the head office, and then the head office says, yeah, try it for 2 years, see what happens, and then they get all these other kids that are like, oh yeah, this is a thing, and it just grows from there. So, but let's get to the questions part of the podcast here. We do have quite a few questions, but I'm sure you and I can talk through these in good time. If I was an esport athlete though, looking for school, and I just happen to see, Davenport, what can you guys offer that prospective student or athlete?
Well, if you're looking at business, a very strong business curriculum, that is where Davenport shines. Now we do computer information sciences and everything underneath that. We do like things like digital forensics, cybersecurity, networking, coding. Right. We have a nursing program, but Davenport really shines when it comes to their business program. It is a degree that is respected within the region. You're going to be able to get a job. People are going to know the name. They're going to be like, oh, this makes sense. If you're looking for the esports side of things, I know that some people are like, oh, this is a red flag of somewhere we go. We try to push the family atmosphere, right? Where we want you to come in. We want you to lean on each other because if you're learning those soft skills and you haven't really found your people before, sometimes you need to have someone to lean on. We've got a roster of about 50 students, and I tell all of our incoming freshmen, you have all of these other students that you can lean on. If you're having any issues in classes, someone's probably taken that class. If you've had any issues with family, someone has probably had that same family issue. If you're having issues with a significant other, someone's probably been through that same situation where they can help guide you through it if it's new and foreign to you and help you get through it as much as possible. As a coach in esports, my DMs are open 24/7, which is a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
I love all of my students, but sometimes it's 2 a.m. I'm just like, man, just talk to me in the morning, please. Just let me go to bed.
Can this wait until the 6 o'clock alarm, please?
Right. So I think what it is it's the culture and the atmosphere that we try to cultivate within our program. The diverse titles that we offer that are scholarshiped. Anyone that we're recruiting is coming in on a scholarship 9 times out of 10.
Nice.
I do have the option to do like preferred walk-on type of deals, but I want people to come in with the opportunity to say, yes, I am already getting value from this program in terms of some sort of monetary amount.
Right.
Davenport is fairly aggressive on our academic scholarships as well. This isn't insider knowledge. This isn't like, crazy secrets. It's on the website.
Right.
You get in the door, it's $5,000 for students academically. This awesome. Then stacks with athletics. So, let's say our average scholarship for esports is $5,000 and you're a 3.0 student getting 6,500 on academics. You're getting $11,500. Yeah. And so it makes this fairly comparable to a state institution that may have a club program, but there's no scholarships involved.
Right.
So if you're like, I want to compete, I want to, be able to do that at the highest level, and I want to be able to get my education, and I want to make it cheap, Davenport may be a very good fit for me.
I mean, it's huge all around. I mean, you as a kid who might be listening to this, you might not realize what $11,500 will do for you. But this is a lot, man. I can tell you right now, any parents that hear that, like, their ears just perked up because that's $11,500 savings. But it can be more, it could be less. And I'm just saying this, and don't say, it's cliche or whatever, but the family aspect of any esport, traditional sport, whatever it is, I mean, that cements so much in the ground. I can personally say the sports that I played college hockey and baseball. And when you say a family atmosphere, I mean, there was nothing I wouldn't do for those guys. But
Now Owen in a 1v2
you don't know
with
about
Gabe
it going
Miso.
in. And
Trying to
the
find
sound to
one, the damage
the
is there.
CSGO just popped on because there's a commercial before. Now it's back off. But yeah, when you have a family atmosphere in those things, there's nothing better because, I mean, it literally, it in many ways carried me through college. Those people that you turn to every day, that is a massive, massive thing to have at your side. And when you have it in the esports side of things, it is huge. Some people might not realize how big of a team aspect esports is, but it is absolutely monstrous, especially in something like CSGO or Rocket League. When you're sitting next to your teammates and you have that responsibility of your teammates with you, that is something very different than when you're just sitting here playing and then calming with somebody over the internet. Very, very different. And when you have that family aspect, it only makes for a better tight-knit group of people that will play better. So, I mean, like he said, yeah, it sounds cliche or whatever it is, but when you have that family aspect, that is absolutely huge. When you go to any, because I have seen teams where they don't have that family atmosphere. They're just there to play. And yeah, they might be good on paper, but when you get in their minds or you absolutely set them off on the bench, yeah, they're falling apart very quickly. Very, very different when you have a family atmosphere or you're just there to play. Completely different. So I applaud that 150 million %. Is there any specifics that Davenport can offer students interested in esports? I know, like you said, you have the scholarships, but do you guys have anything else to like casting or like social media or anything that aspect to esports?
Yeah. So when I came in, the goal was, yes, we want to grow our program, but we also want to help students grow their brand, right? Where
Right.
in the world of esports, your brand is everything.
Right.
You like just your social media is your brand.
Yep.
So, our social media is okay. We're just shy of about 1,700 followers, but we get enough interactions where students that are a part of our program, we try to use our platform to highlight them.
Yeah.
Even if it's just as simple as like a retweet or something.
Mm-hmm.
Casting, we're doing more and more of it. I would say personally, we lag behind some other schools.
Mm-hmm.
Aquinas being one of them. They did a lot of great things when Adam was there,
Mm-hmm.
and then Riley has kind of picked up the torch and ran with it. We've managed to get a lot of casting for CS:GO this year, and I think that was a byproduct of need, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
this is your bell cow. This is the team that is really carrying the banner of the team in front of a ton of people. So we've been working with LCA Broadcasting to do all of our ESEA advanced matches.
Mm-hmm.
And they did a few of our ESE. They did main playoffs for us as well. Also shout out to them. They were doing the casting for our JV upper bracket games this past weekend, and they'll also be doing it for this weekend as well. So they'll be doing grand finals.
That's awesome.
Because those guys need the casting as well. They're successful.
Yeah.
What we've wanted to do moving forward is, and it's a little tougher, I think, for us because we don't have like a multimedia degree path. So we don't have art, we don't have a lot liberal arts, we don't have media, we don't have communications degrees. So students that are interested in that may not look at us, but we've wanted to bring in students to be casters. And on scholarship, so they would be a part of the program as a whole, but their job is, hey,
casting.
We've got this game on this night. Are you available? Yes, you're available. Cool. Here's our producer. They're going to set you up. They're going to make sure you're ready to go. Here's your call time. Here's when game time starts. Here's roughly when game time ends. Block that off. That's when you're on call for the day.
I mean, and that's perfect because that is essentially what anybody who's looking into casting goes into. I mean, that's it. You laid everything out, even though it is not a degree in your program or at Davenport. You laid it all out there. You're going to school in the eSport program, but you're going for casting. And you laid it all out how it would happen in the real world when they step out and if they wanted to cast beyond. So if anybody had any interest in casting, there it is. Just look at the eSports program, go and cast. But I mean, that's exactly how a lot of this starts, because a lot of kids might be like, well, I want to go for casting. I'm going to go to, a cat or a pro or like a news program into a college, you know what I'm saying? But no, you don't have to do that. Just go to the eSport program at any college, and I guarantee you go like, Coach, I'd like to cast your stuff. They would instantly eat that up.
Oh yeah,
instantly eat that up. So
because they always need more help there.
Oh, always, And the thing is, if you can go to like say Davenport and you become their instant caster for so many things, and you have to remember, a lot of casters that do these games might not play the game and know the game inside out. But you do a little bit of research, you find out what the goals of these teams are doing, and you're in casting. And that's, 100%, and you're only going to get better the more you do it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, again, that's another thing that, it might not be offered on paper there, but as I guarantee you go to any esports program and say, yeah, I'd like to cast, or I'd like to try casting. Boom, you're in.
Yeah.
Because that's
And
like the biggest thing for any esport out there is just casting.
it is what like esports really thrives on content.
Yeah.
And if you're not making content, like you can be as competitive as possible, but some people may not know where you are if you're not creating the content and getting it out in front of people. And that's a big part of what casting is.
Hmm.
And like you said, like you don't have to be like League of Legends, for example, you don't have to be a challenger ranked player to go into casting. You can
Right.
be a gold or or platinum player and like, oh well, like I'm never gonna make it there, but I love the game. I'm enthusiastic about it. I know a lot about it because I've played it for so many years. Let me see how I do in front of a microphone and get into it. And what a better place to try it out than at a college that's
Right.
willing to give you scholarship dollars where we're not expecting you to be perfect.
Right.
We have 4 years, like hone your craft over those next 4 years. You can come in extremely green and we will work with you and we will help you get better. Cause like you said, the only way to get better is to do it more.
Right. Exactly. 100%. The next one we kind of already went over with the games that you guys offer. But what do you see becoming the norm in collegiate esports in the next 5 years? Now, I know this is a very broad and wide open
Yeah.
question. But when you look at collegiate esports right now, I look at, you have a few divisions, if you will. You have NACE. You kind of have schools trying to stick to conferences. You have no sign of the NCAA stepping in anytime soon to make it like kind of, as fluid as traditional sports is, if you will. But what do you see the norm in collegiate esports in the next 5 years, kind of in those guidelines?
Yeah. Because I know like you brought up there doesn't really seem to be any governing body, right?
No.
And everybody's trying to fight for their piece of the pie.
Right.
So
And we
NACE
know
is
the pie's there. We just
yeah.
don't know how to get that piece of pie.
NACE has been doing a lot of really good things.
They have.
I know they get a lot of flack, but as I've been at a university that this is we're going to be finishing up 3 years as a NACE institution. I've seen a
Mhm.
lot of really positive movements over the past 3 years. They're moving in the right direction, right?
Right.
But they still have to compete up with like upstarts. Like NECC is a great conference or a great organization for you to align with because while NACE like all power to them. They're run by people that are more suits, right? They're
Mhm.
more boardrooms people,
Right.
whereas NUCC has kind of that down south, like southern hospitality feel where it's run by people that are in the same shoes as you.
Right.
So I think a lot of colleges see value in like, oh, they understand what I'm going through.
Mhm.
Whereas NACE is like, we're going to do a lot of stuff by the book. This is how things should be running, and this is how we're going to do it. And it may
Right.
tick some people off, but our hands are tied because we can only do what we're given permission to do.
Right.
Hopefully, in the next 5 years, you see the norm would be that developers are more willing to work with leagues and organizations to
Right.
allow them to do more.
Right.
I think you'll see esports will grow out of just being primary, at least the collegiate level, grow out of being primarily like a D2 type of thing. Like it's D2 and below. It's a lot of small private universities
Right.
that they see esports, and Davenport is no exception. It is a recruiting metric. It puts more butts in seats.
Mhm.
Granted, I was aware of that, but my thought process, and I was upfront about this, was like, I want to build a championship program. I will do this because I understand that this is how, like, this is the steps that I need to grow my program and do more, which
Right.
means bringing more students in and recruiting my butt off. And I get that. But at the same time, I also want to bring in high level students to create teams that are extremely competitive.
Right.
I think eventually, especially Division 1 schools. So if you think like a Michigan State is very competitive,
Mhm.
University of Michigan, I believe you guys had Sibby Barton on here. Like they're very
Yeah.
competitive as well. Um, but they're not going to need students to be recruited
No.
because they
They're
already
Michigan.
have.
They're Michigan
Yeah,
State. Yeah.
you put the block in, it's like, hey, we're doing esports now and we have scholarships, then people flock to them.
Yeah.
I think you'll see more schools like that size getting involved and saying,
Yeah.
oh, this is the next wave, this is the new frontier of competition.
Yep.
Because we saw last year that we're essentially COVID proof. We didn't stop.
Right.
Esports just kept trucking on,
Yeah.
where while like Division 2 football stopped, all
Correct.
fall sports literally came to a screeching halt. And we're like, we got like a
Yeah.
match this week. I'm gonna be focused on that.
I think
Um,
minor league teams were even stopped. Like pro sports
yeah,
were stopped. So I mean, it comes to show you just how powerful the internet is, and especially esports, because we continued on.
yeah,
And to be honest with you, we blew up because everyone was at home, no one was doing anything. The only sports that were watchable We're esports.
Yeah.
It was our source of competition. Now, fast forward a year, stuff starts returning. And yeah, you're going to see fluctuations, of course. But yeah, I mean, that put esports on the map for a lot of people who hadn't seen esports before.
Yeah.
So it's very different.
I mean, so the broad answer to the broad question, what do you see becoming the norm, is you're gonna see a lot of similarities between what we see right now in NCAA and like
Mhm.
that division of skill and where the money is and who's doing what and how people are
Right.
competing. You'll see that in esports as more and more schools adopt it, and as it becomes more mainstream, and as developers open up a little bit more to organizations being able to do more with their intellectual property.
I
Um,
100% agree with you. I think more D1s step in. Not to say that the D1s that are already in on the side, but I think there is more. Michigan
yeah,
opens up the doors a bit more. Michigan State really opens the doors a bit more. Like these bigger schools that don't necessarily have those scholarships or have those set in stone programs like we see with you guys or Northwood or some of the community colleges. A lot of those schools are getting a lot of vibe because they're first to do it. But once the D1 step in, I think you're going to see things change and evolve a little bit. But I do see them stepping in more. But I think the NCAA also has to kind of knock on the door a bit more too. Just
yeah.
because, I feel like the D1s are kind of strained because they don't know what to do yet. Whereas NCAA doesn't even know what to do yet.
Yeah. I mean, as someone who came from traditional sports and working with an athletic director and understanding his day-to-day workload, and then trying to understand the day-to-day workload of a Division II school, I can understand athletic directors of Division 1s look at esports and they're like, one, I have no clue how to approach this. And two, I don't have the time.
Right.
Because they've got all of these varsity sports they're already dealing with. And sometimes, they're dealing with a football coach who may be on a new one coming in or one
Right.
going out, or a coach who's just a pain in the butt that they don't want to deal with. And they're like, I can't take on something that I don't have any knowledge about and
Right.
could potentially be its own department. When you really think about esports, it covers
So
pretty
many.
much everything. Yeah.
Damn.
So
every game under the sun could be an esport in some fashion, and that's tough that's tough for the NCAA to say, how do you make this a sport? How do you make this an NCAA category? Because there are so many different game titles. Do you just take one game title and run with it? No, you can't do that. That takes away the esports category. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, it's very tough. And I always like asking this question because everyone has their different ways of seeing this play out, because no one knows how this road is going to, clear out for everybody. In fact, I don't think it's going to be one road. It's going to be many different roads, as we see with esports every day. Every day there's a different road taken by somebody that nobody's taken before, which is cool to see, because esports is its infancy, if you will. It's not even infancy. We're still baking in the oven. But yeah, it's cool to see, but at the same time, it's kind of like, where's it going to go? We know it's not going to end. We know video games aren't going anywhere. I mean, look at us now. From when I started playing in the mid 80s to now, look where we've come. I mean, that's just a short time of 30, 35 years. And video games are now being played competitively for big money in front of big venues. Like, that's wild. And we would have thought, and you and I sitting back on the couch in the old days playing Mario, we didn't think anything like that. You know what I'm saying?
Nah, I was just trying to relax and play video games.
Right.
I tell people my age all the time, like, oh, you guys offer scholarships? It's like, yeah, like if I knew that this was a thing when I was 18 years old,
right,
I probably would have, one, been taking those video games a little more seriously.
Oh yeah.
But two, I would have been on board immediately at whatever university I was at. Like, I may have not have dropped out of college my first year, because I would have had something that was like, no, this is a driving force. You have to maintain a certain GPA to compete. And I was like, okay, that makes sense, and I would do that.
So when you tie in the things of the traditional sports to the esports thing, it starts making a little more sense. When the kids, when you say kids, I love how the fact that we use that against them. When I was a kid, parents were like, nope, you can't play unless you do your homework, and now we're like, you got to do your homework if you want to compete. Okay. We've flipped the tables and we're using it against them, which I was like, congratulations, whoever came up with that one. What is the biggest challenge in your eyes right now with collegiate esports? And we were talking prior to the show, we could write a novel on this forever, but what do you see in your eyes as the biggest challenge right now in collegiate and high school esports?
I think to kind of the most broad is education, education of the people that are making the decisions. I know, working with my administrators, and they're extremely open, and we have it's an ongoing conversation of, I think they understand where I'm coming from,
right?
But it's the highest ones they're cutting the checks, where it's still seen to some degree that esports is just gaming, right?
Right. A waste of time.
So yeah, so whenever you see colleges, they put a posting out, they're like, hey, we want to hire an esports director. That's great. Happy you want to do it. But they haven't anybody tell them, hey, if you want to do this, that's awesome, but you can't have one guy run all of these things. Like, well, what if we just
Right.
do 1 or 2 games? It's like, you can't really do that either.
There's a lot of kids and a lot of games, man.
Yeah, and each game is essentially its own sport. You don't ask your volleyball coach to coach your football team, or you
No.
don't ask your basketball coach to coach your bowling team. Yes, they're ball sports, but they're drastically different.
Very different.
So it's educating that, and with that also valuing directors
Mhm.
or those that lead their programs at a higher clip. And I've had this discussion, actually talked to my
I
wife
saw
about
a
this.
lot of tweets about that over the weekend.
Yep. So I talked to my wife about this this past week. So the head coach for Winthrop University just recently stepped down.
Mhm.
They won CLAW last year, so they were the best League of Legends team in the nation. They won it all last year, and he was like, "I'm going back to a 9 to 5. This isn't for me anymore." You know, I think what it comes down to is like they're just not getting enough support, and I
Right.
understand that as someone who works in the space.
Mhm.
I also have to keep telling myself, as a traditional football fan, Mike Leach wrote a book called "Swing Your Sword," and it gave a lot of backstory on his journey as a coach. Like, he didn't play football; he was a lawyer. That is his job. That was what he did before he got into football coaching. I think he was a lawyer from BYU.
Mhm.
But at one point, he was making $5,000 for the year as a full-time assistant coach at Valdosta State.
Wow.
And I was like, and look at how much they made then, because that was probably fairly standard.
Right.
And now, like, we're talking about coaches that got $100 million contracts this past
Yeah.
week.
Yeah. Like what? 4 of them? And
Yeah, I mean, it's
none of them
crazy.
are in the playoffs.
Nope. Brian Kelly, his team got left out. Lincoln Riley, Oklahoma didn't make it. Mel Tucker, they came close. He almost,
Yeah.
if they had beaten
What,
Ohio State,
10 years, 95 million.
yeah, insane amount. I mean, that's what makes the money, so that's where it goes.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things, like, we have to be patient. Yes, a lot of us deserve more than what we make because
Right.
of the amount of hours we put in and how much oversight we have over as many students as we do.
Right.
But it'll get there, and I think education will fix a lot of those things, but it's not an overnight fix.
I never thought about it in that way. And I was kind of curious as where you were going with that when we started, but it makes complete sense. Like, yeah, there isn't known. A lot of people will write the check to start the program, but they don't know what goes into the program. Like, there's going to be a lot more checks to write when you get in the program. Why start a program if you're going to do it half-ass, right? You got to do it the right way. Now, granted, there isn't really a right way to do it, but there are foundations out there where you can look and see what they have and how they're doing it. And that's
Yeah.
what I love about esports programs in college right now is a lot of people are picking and putting together their own plans and programs, and they are turning out great. Like, I go back to Adam on this because Adam has done it at a few different places. But you can see how he started some of those programs, where he got to those programs, and then he realized he's not going to get maybe any farther with that program, so he goes to another program. Carl has taken some of the knowledge that he had under Adam, and he's building his program. Same with Chris. Same with anybody that's kind of worked with those mentors. Like, and a lot of it stems from somebody who's very knowledgeable, has been in it for 20 plus years, like Doc. And Doc is sharing that knowledge, and people are picking in pieces, but they're all their own individual programs. Yep. And it's so good to see. But when you have a school say, okay, here's a check, now start your program, it just doesn't work that way. And unfortunately, not yet.
Yeah, I think if you're a school that's looking to get into esports and you don't know what to do, the first thing to do is reach out to someone that's been there, that's done it. I've had some conversations with a small D3 school up in Wisconsin, and I was talking to their AD.
Who was it? I got to ask, because I went to a small D3 school in Wisconsin.
University of Wisconsin, Red River.
Oh, River Falls?
Maybe.
Yeah, it's one of those.
D3 public institution. But I had a conversation with their AD because I was tagged by people within NACE. So I'm on the competition council in NACE. I talked to one of their onboarding. Her name is Ashley. She's great. She's like their onboarding specialist for incoming schools. And she was like, I don't know anybody in the region that can talk to them that would be able, like, to kind of lead them through. I was like, yeah, throw them over to me. I'll see what I can do.
Right.
And I was like, look, this is like, here's pitfalls you should avoid in terms of pay. Here's how you should approach staffing.
Right.
Don't stop doing everything that everyone else is doing. Like, you can have a League of Legends team, that's great, but what are you guys have the most of a fan base on campus for, and lean into that niche.
Right.
That's what we did. Like, our League of Legends team, I love our kids and they work their butt off, but we're not a challenger level team.
Right.
So why would I lean into League of Legends
When that's
as
not
something
your
that I
niche.
want? It's
Yeah.
not my niche. We made our name on first person shooters, so that's what we're leaning into.
Right.
Carlo, who was my former assistant coach, is now at Albion. That was one thing I told him. I was like, lean into what you know.
Right.
Lean into what is going to be able to make a name for you that maybe no one else is doing. And what he's leaning into is fighting games, because that's his background.
Right. And
that's
and
where
the thing is, fighting games are huge, just like first person shooters. And the thing is,
Yeah.
like, you don't have to be worried about leaning into your niche and it's not going to be popular. These games are popular. They have their own crowd for these games.
Yeah, it may seem a little smaller, but that doesn't mean that crowd and that fan base isn't
No.
as enthusiastic about their game as
Right.
League of Legends. So like the biggest challenge we talk about is education,
Mhm.
and just like, if you want to start something, look at the data. There's so much more data now for what to do and what not to do than there was 4 years ago.
Right.
Hell, 2019 there was 4 varsity programs in the state of Michigan for collegiate. 4. It was Davenport, Aquinas, Northwood, and I think it was probably Alma. I think Alma was the 4th one.
Yeah.
This year there's 20 of them. There's 20 of us. Like,
Yeah.
we blew up.
Yeah.
One, because we're in Michigan. Like, I'm looking out the window. It's
Snowing.
and it's cloudy for like 8 months out of the year.
Yeah.
So what are you gonna do but stay inside and play video games? But I think also it shows, like, they saw how successful other ones were. They saw the growth that came from those programs.
Right.
Other schools, like, oh, this is a way for us to get into it. And all they have to do is come to any of the schools that are already involved and say, hey, how did you do this? Can I pick your brain to make sure that you avoid any pitfalls that we made along the way?
Right.
Use the data and use the resources you have to create a program that's done right the first time.
Yeah, and that's why I referred to you guys at the beginning as a kind of a historic program, because there are so much foundations that people grab from your programs, grab from Northwood program, grab from Elma program. Like, there's certain schools that have been around doing this long enough that people are taking your blueprints and kind of molding them into their niche, if you will. But yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Like, when you look at even high schools now, and this leads into the next question, the high schools here in Northern Michigan are kind of popping up out of nowhere. Traverse City Central has one now. Elk Rapids has one. Kalkaska has one. Marion High School has one. There's a bunch up here now that are starting to pop because they're like, look at these colleges. They have programs. Why don't we have programs? And it's just like, why not? But do them correctly and kind of pick and piece and see what you can do at your disposal. And I really think it's going to, within the next 5 years, going back to a few questions, that is something that you'll really see take off. And kind of leads into our next question is, do you see more hand-in-hand relationship with collegiate and high school esports down the road?
I think there already is a bit of one.
Mhm.
I know that Adam, when he was at Aquinas, and Cody from Northwood had done a lot of work with MySF.
Mhm.
Um,
And that's a big
my-
one around Michigan, especially downstate. Not so much up here, but yeah, MySF is a big one.
I know they try to constantly expand. I know that I went to a tournament that was run by Southwest Michigan Esports,
Yep.
which is another smaller pocket of schools.
Immortals just had a big thing with them this past weekend.
Yeah, it was the Rocket League tournament that I was at.
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
So there is, to a degree, I think it may not be as like out and front and center.
Right.
And also I think that everyone has limitations. I've talked about where once we expand our current practice space to where we could potentially go, I would want to reach out to more Grand Rapids area schools and say, hey, do you want to come in and utilize the space? Which we're allocating as overflow to come in here after school, come out, hang out, do your practices. We'll give you access to our technology and what we have on hand, so you can do what you need to do and continue to grow your program as well.
Yeah.
But I think, we all have limitations, right? Like, so
correct.
We don't all have 50, 60 person labs where we can throw an entire high school team in there and do what we need to do on a daily basis as well. But I think, do I see more hand in hand? I think so. I think it's extremely important. I've talked to high school educators. I said, what you guys do at the high school level directly impacts our ability to grow and develop the collegiate level.
Mhm.
Because right now in Michigan, while there are plenty of schools, in terms of talent and the recruitability for us whenever we're looking to put together championship rosters,
Yep.
it's the pool of talent isn't as large. It's not to say the students aren't excited about what they do, but I can't build a championship roster off of Silver League of Legends players
Right.
or Silver Valorant players or ESEA open players for CSGO. Now I can develop them, and it's going to take some time. But if you have kind of like a win now mentality, it's going to be hard. And all of us are recruiting the same 6 to 10 students.
Yeah, because
So
I mean they have that one kind of they kind of have that handcuffed because of play versus, right? They strictly have the rights to play League of Legends or whatever it is. So there's very few schools for you guys to kind of choose from.
yeah, and I don't want to get into play versus.
I don't need you to, but I mean, I just want to I mean, it is
Yeah.
tougher than a lot of people realize when it comes to. It's not like high school football where everyone has a team
Yeah.
and you can go out there and pick from the crop. Like finding League of Legends teams is a little bit different in high school and collegiate levels. Whereas like Rocket League, I just interviewed a middle school team up in Sault Ste. Marie that was 10th in the nation in Rocket League, middle school esports. I didn't even know a thing existed, but they competed in 300 schools across the nation. I was like, where have you guys been? And we had them on the show, and I was like, I didn't even know there was such a thing as middle school esports. I don't even know high school esports, let alone middle school esports. But Sault Ste. Marie has a whole gang of kids up there smashing away at Rocket League. And I was like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
But it's, some are taking the time to do it right and have the opportunity for those kids. They don't even have a high school team up there in Sault Ste. Marie. And I was just like, I hope you guys get one because these kids are really good. But it just goes to show you it's tougher. It's much tougher than people realize for you guys to go out and recruit or find people because it's just not at your disposal like it is football, basketball, baseball, hockey, whatever it is. It's just not there yet. But like I said, I think that will be something down the road. And I do foresee you guys, especially I've seen some programs already doing it, kind of like you mentioned. I know Carl brings in high schools and has them practice at the Renegades facilities that they're at, which is a really cool kind of blueprint. But yeah, I mean, once you get that opportunity, have schools come in from all over the place, especially GR. You guys have high schools all over the place down there.
Yeah.
Whereas like here, we have one every 30 miles.
I mean, isn't like GR is one of the strongest, at least traditional sports and football
Oh,
complexes areas in the state.
East Grand
So-
Rapids, Catholic, or there's a Catholic school down there that beat Cadillac that went to states. That was really, they broke the scoring record in a season.
Yeah.
But yeah, Grand Rapids has so many schools down there. And I really think you guys will find a way to make that really work.
Yeah.
I really foresee it happening. But do you see gaming companies working closer with all levels of esports? Now, this was kind of run on by Play Versus, but gaming companies, as if somebody's listening to this for the first time, we've talked about on podcasts before, traditional sports are not owned by anybody. I can go out and we can compete and throw a ball around and we're completely fine. Video games are owned by companies, so you have to get rights to be able to compete in these games. Do you happen to see the companies in college and high school working better, a little more fluid, so you guys can have these competitions?
I mean, I think that the driving force behind this is always going to be Riot, right? Like
Right.
that's the one. Like when we talk about developers, Valve doesn't care what you do with CS:GO.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all.
With the release of Halo Infinite, Bungie basically came out and said, "Do whatever you want."
Which I love.
Yeah, that's. I think that's the right way to go about it. As long as your game is working how it is intended,
Right.
let people hold their like. Why are you charging people money to play a free game?
I don't know. I don't know. But my
but for-
biggest thing was always like, and this is where the gray area comes with streamers too, because you're streaming a game and you're making money off the game, but they don't care because you're making the game popular.
Mhm.
Why not do the same for collegiate?
Yeah, I know that there are some people that have been former colleagues of mine
Mhm.
and are still colleagues of mine that are now working with Riot on their collegiate division.
Mhm.
So people that have been in the space, have been working in the space, and understand the frustrations that colleges are having with collegiate League of Legends. Like, hey, you should be doing more of this. NACE this fall was granted the opportunity to do a full League of Legends Swiss style season, similar
Oh,
to
really?
CLOL. Yeah,
Okay.
so we competed in that. CLOL also simultaneously did their own,
Right.
but NACE announced theirs first, and everything was signups were for that one first, and that's what we did. And so you're seeing them kind of like they're giving a little more leeway. They understand. I think it's because you have people that have worked in the space
Right.
that are in those meetings like, no, you should be doing this because this is how it's going to impact positively your brand. League of Legends is hard enough to get into as it is.
Right.
Why are you pushing away potential players that you could be getting and continuing to have a successful esports brand for years to come? I mean, CSGO is there's a reason why it's one of the oldest games in esports.
Right.
It's you can pick it up, you have a basic idea of how it works, and they don't tell who tell
Who
you who
can and
can and
can't.
can't. Yeah,
All
they
right.
just let people hold their own tournaments in their own leagues. So I think it's getting there. I think like everything else. You just have to be patient. And like we talked about, we're still in the oven.
Right.
We're not even in our infancy yet. Like
No.
but we're also working in an industry where we want everything to happen
Right.
yesterday.
Right. Exactly. I mean, that's just society nowadays. Everybody wants it now. I mean, I'm an example of that. When graphics cards come out, I've been waiting for years somehow to get a graphics card. But I mean, everybody wants it now. Everybody wants everything right now. Like you said yesterday. So I understand the impatience for a lot of people, and it is tough to wait. I'm a very impatient person in general. But yeah, I think it will happen. Like you said, they're dipping their toe in the water. They're testing
Yeah.
things. And when you have companies like Riot, like Blizzard, or like Epic, they want to do everything correctly. And I always faulted Epic when I was a Fortnite pro. They wouldn't come out with competitive. They took over a year for competitive, and they wouldn't let us do anything but scrim. And they wouldn't even give us a private map, so we had to find each other in public maps. But we always hated Epic for that. But then Epic came out with a pretty stellar competitive map, or competitive roadmap, if you will. Now, granted, they still haven't really kind of left that roadmap. I don't know what they're doing anymore, but I get it. The patience, they're setting it up. They
Yeah.
want to do it their way, their game, their correct way. And they want to be able to, regulate who's doing what. I remember we got in a league for Fortnite, and they were franchising. I went to the CEO of Lazarus at the time, and I was like, Charlie, you might want to get Epic on the horn. These guys are franchising. I don't know if we want to be in this league. And yeah, lo and behold, they were shut down the next day. But like, you can't do things unless you are given the permission. I think down the road you'll see a little bit more hand in hand. I just don't know if they know how to kind of go about it. You know what I'm saying? Like, just like how NCAA doesn't know how to go about esports just yet. I don't think game developers essentially really know how to go about it yet either. They don't want to give everybody the rights. I get that, but they also want to hold it very close to their chest.
Yeah, it's they have to trust the people that they're giving the okay
Right.
to. It's like you're not going to let any Joe off the street drive your car. 'Cause
No.
that's your car.
Yeah.
and like at the end of the day, like you want to make sure that your car is taken care of.
Right.
This is their property. I mean, it's kind of a double-edged sword. I think Riot doing basically you can't do immediate timers on any of your broadcasts because Riot's the only one that can do that. Everyone else is a 3-minute delay.
Right.
But in their minds, they're like, this is our baby. This is our product, and we believe that we know the best way to distribute this product and to make things work. So we're going to go ahead and take care of everything.
Right. They don't want anybody to sully their name or sully the game, you know?
Yeah,
And I
that
get
makes
that.
sense.
Yeah. So I mean, it sucks, but at the same time, like you said, patience. Patience is key in a lot of this. What has you excited for esports in the next year, 2 years?
In terms of games, Halo.
Oh yeah. Well, the thing is, when that dropped, okay. So here's the thing with Halo, and I'm super happy that I'm seeing some movement with the collegiate esports in Halo, because you, just like me, we played a lot of Halo back in the day, more than I should have. And the thing was, it was one of those game-changing events in my life because we played that game so much, but that was the first real competitive online. I didn't even do LANs. This was Halo 2, Halo 3 on Xbox 360, so we had the comms and we could go into games. I was just like, this is game-changing. Like, this is, imagine 007 GoldenEye, but with internet. I was like, this is game over. And then Halo kind of lost its steps a little bit, you know? Bungie left, 343 picked it up, and then 343 came out with what I consider to be the best Halo since Halo 2. Like, this Halo feels good. The rank system is good. I cannot express how good playing ranked Halo feels again. And I was just like, man, if college doesn't pick this up, I'm going to be a little disappointed. Maybe it's my 30s nostalgia, just loving the fact that Halo's back and it feels good. But I was just like, man, if I were a kid right now in college, I'd be playing Halo.
Yeah, it's all of us esports boomers that
Right?
grew up with it. We're like, man, we love Halo. But I mean, the same thing. Like for me in the program I've built, it's perfect.
Right.
We're an FPS school, so
Right.
why not do it? So I'm excited to see how it grows. I'm usually pretty tentative before I start offering
Right.
scholarships for a new title because I want to see a very solid groundwork for students because
Right.
Apex is great, but EA has come out and said that they're not going to do collegiate at all, flat
Right.
out. So we have to compete in things like community tournaments through Apex Spark. We
Right.
have to basically go and do ALGS qualifiers, which is great. Like that's amazing competition, but I can't go to my boss and be like, "Hey, we beat, insert third, tier 3 esports organization." Like, who's that? I'm like, "Oh, well, there's just some like there's community, they're streamers and they're really like they're not a college. I don't really care.
Right.
Like we're a college team. We want you to compete against colleges." So it's tough. Apex Spark luckily has a lot of colleges in it because that's where all of us go
Yep.
to find competition. So I'm gonna wait, and by wait I mean I may just be waiting like a couple months before I start saying, "Hey, we're going all in on Halo."
Right.
But like I've had students that are like, "Hey, let me know if you're doing Halo scholarships.
Mhm.
I may leave the game that I'm playing and go over to it." I mean,
Yeah.
I just talked about Apex. Snipe Down for Apex left TSM to go do Halo because it's what he grew up on.
Yeah.
He's a controller player. He went back to doing Halo. He's like, why not? That's what I know.
And it feels so good playing an FPS on controller, and it feels like it's meant for that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like you can compete with a controller over a mouse and keyboard in a game. You don't see that very often. And the thing is, it feels so good. And I was just like, man, I love having the sticks back in my hands. I use the sticks for Fortnite, but for so long we were at a disadvantage with using the sticks on Fortnite. And then when you go to COD, the addition to mouse and keyboard in COD has just kind of changed the game in that one. But I still use controller. And when I play Warzone, I actually use mouse and keyboard. I don't know why. I'm ass backwards in that one. But Halo, it just feels so good on controller.
Yeah.
It felt like I've never left from Halo 2, which was awesome. And the fact that I can grab 4 friends, we can go into ranked and feel good about playing the game, like that, I've missed that so much. I don't know if it's the BRs that have ruined me, but it just felt so good. Because like Call of Duty gets stale after so long. It's been what 20 years that we've gotten a new Call of Duty every year. It just feels stale to me. But when you bring Halo back after what 8 years of absence, and it just feels crispy, man, there's nothing better.
It's like it's like a nice warm hug. Like it
really
feels
is
good.
It just feels so good. And then
Yes.
what were we? Oh, we sat down with Fortnite yesterday, and because they had the new chapter, and so we
Yeah.
played it, and it was like, oh man, it feels so good to play a new map. And then it got old, but I never got that with Halo. We played in so many hours the first week, and I didn't. I had the itch to turn it on in the middle of the night. I woke up from sleep and like, I want to play more Halo. Like I haven't had that in so long, and it just feels good from a first person shooter. Because the last 4 years, a lot of people saying first person shooters are dead. You got what, third person, or you got battle royales, or you have whatever going on, and then Valorant comes out of nowhere, and Valorant is a great game, And then when you look at CSGO, CSGO is never going anywhere. Personally, I don't think that is a game that'll ever die. But then Halo is just one of those things. It just hit me so hard, and I was like, oh my God, I'm glad this is back. Halo is a staple game that I don't think people realize just how staple it is. When you look at it, like Gears of War, what was Gears of War based on? It was based on a lot of Halo stuff, and it just felt so good.
Yeah, you talk to anyone, my age, your age, in our generation, what was one of your first introductions to first person shooters? And like you'll get GoldenEye a lot
Oh,
because
yeah.
a lot of people played N64, but then there's like this weird like attraction to like I remember playing Halo.
Yep.
I remember playing like the first one because that was me. I'm 14 years ish old, staying up until 3 a.m.
Mhm.
playing. My buddies and I just picked the biggest map. We
Yep.
did just deathmatch, and you're driving scorpions everywhere, and you're just having a ball. And you're just that there's a lot of fond memories around. I played Halo 2 up until I was going into college. I had the big chonky Xbox,
Yep.
then the ridiculously like weirdly shaped
Oh,
controller.
that controller was so
It was
messed up.
bad.
It was so bad. And then the next one, they have like the best controller ever made. So the
Yeah.
360 still to this day is my favorite controller.
Yeah, I mean, and every controller, like, there's been a weird, like, most controllers are semi built off of that. I
Oh
think,
yeah, it's
like,
just the ergonomics or whatever, how you
yeah,
want to say, of just the joystick here and the joystick here. Like, and for a long time, I was a PlayStation kid, so the joysticks here,
you were right in front of you.
yeah, you got used to it. But when they moved here, I was like, oh my Lanta, like that's game changing. And now
Yeah.
everyone uses that blueprint for the most part. When you talk a pro controller for the Switch, you get that style of controller. Or if you talk like any rip off PlayStation controller, you get that controller. I was just like, why hasn't PlayStation learned? Like, I hate your controller. Fix it.
It's their IP.
It is.
We had a COD player, and she played on Xbox, but the competitive standard back in 2019 was on PlayStation.
Oh.
And so so through Collegiate Call of Duty League, which is our college league, they adhere to whatever the standard is of the CDL.
Correct. So like PS4 or PS5 or Xbox One or Xbox Series X. Yeah. Yeah.
So back then it was PS4 and a PlayStation controller.
Okay.
So in order for her to be able to practice at home and then translate it over to when we had team practices, went and bought her an Astro controller. So Astro headset, like the Astro headsets with the mixed amp, but they have a controller that has hot swappable sticks.
Correct.
So you can swap the D-pad and the stick, and it is legal for CCL, but allows her to have the same button layout that she was familiar with at home.
Yep.
And that's what we did, because she was like, this is what I use.
Right.
And now it's computer and controllers competitive standard. So they're still going with controllers, and I think it just has to do with probably just history and tradition in Call of Duty. But then they also realized that Call of Duty now is built for PC. 120, 144, 240 frames.
Yep.
And the PS5 just can't hang.
No.
So we're going to put it on a PC with a 3080 and 32 gigs of RAM, and you're going to be able to get all the frames possible.
And that was like when for me, when I saw the next gen consoles, I was like, okay, you're getting closer. But I was a console kid forever, and I didn't change the PC until 2017. But when I got the frames, oh boy, was my life ever changed, because I started streaming on Destiny, and Destiny was 30 frames all the way up until 2 years ago, playing 30 frames. And then when you're open, your world opens to 240 frames. Like, my monitor is one of the OG esports monitors. It's the 240 frames BenQ, like what all the CSGOs used to use whenever they went to tournaments like 10 years ago. But it's 1080p, 240 frames. And I was just like, oh my God, I can't play anything under 144 anymore. It just doesn't feel right. And people are like, you can't tell the difference. Yes, you can.
Yes, you can.
Yes, you can. Don't tell me you can't see the difference. And then we just bought a new TV, and that new TV is an LG, and it has that, like, gives you all the frames. So the movies are ruined unless you turn the smoother off, because it looks like somebody's doing it with a home camera. You can see everything, including the things you're not meant to see. So it ruins movies. I was like, frames good for games, frames bad for cinema.
Yeah, there was a YouTube video that was like, frame for cinema, like, movies should be like in 30 frames per second or something. But yeah, I mean, we had a student that went from playing on 60 to 144.
Oh.
And he played 60 at home and 144 in our lab, and he was like, I just got to come to the lab all the time. Like, I can't go home and play on 60. He's like, I just can't.
No.
I've heard going from 144 to 240 is less of a jump in terms of like how it feels, but going from 60 to 144 is enormous.
Yes, correct. And I went from 30 to 240. So I was like night and day. I thought I was playing a completely different game. But then there was, I heard, what is the next step? 330? 360?
Yeah, there's an LG 360. So our lab has, they're all technically 240s, but you can overclock them to 280.
Oh, okay.
So we have 14 of those in our lab. And it was between those, or if the budget allowed, I was looking at the LG 360s.
360s.
I was like, but I don't need them.
No.
Because at the same time, most people aren't going to be able to see that.
Correct.
Like, it's diminishing returns.
Yep.
And so
that was the big thing that I was told was, once you get above 240, it's going to be so minuscule that you probably wouldn't even notice.
Yeah. The only reason you want that number in the corner of your screen to be over 240 is so that way, if it's high enough, it doesn't dip down below it.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
that's why CS is like that was our driving force. We just got 10 brand new PCs and 14 monitors because we wanted to make sure that if a CS player came to our or any FPS player came to our lab
And just saw that
and
number.
and they used our equipment,
Yeah.
they weren't limited by the equipment.
Right.
It's more of a personal limitation by your game sense and your mechanic skills. You can't say, oh, well, I'm not getting enough frames. Well, we got 3070s, 32 gigs of RAM,
Right.
and we've got a Ryzen 7 5800X and a 280 hertz
Ooh.
monitor. That like you're not limited. You're getting all the frames you need. Now it's on like your limiting factor is you.
Yeah.
So remove as many variables as possible.
And that was proven. So anybody who thinks the frame thing is a myth here, it was proven. Linus Tech Tips, which is a huge tech thing on YouTube, all right? He actually took Shroud and took a CSGO, another CSGO pro, and gave them 60 frames compared to 240 plus frames. And yes, it makes a difference because you can see so many different frames of a guy running through in CSGO. Huge difference. Shroud could not hit a thing in 60 frames, but 240, he was nice, lights out. It blew my mind. But it does make a huge difference. All right, so we've reached the end of our question portion here, buddy. Is there anything else that you want to lay out that you want to talk about or you want to get off your chest for Davenport Esports, anything?
I think I'm good. I mean, I got the obviously we'll wait till the end to do like your standard
fun,
plugs.
My standard plugs and fun questions here.
Yes, sir.
Let me get my piece of paper.
Okay.
I can find it. I always lose these stupid questions. I ask somebody, everyone, every time. 10 questions. I have them here somewhere, but I always lose them. Is it this one? Yeah. See, I knew I had it around here. All right. So what I do with all my podcast, there's Bowser, my Newfoundland. He's gonna open the door. So what I do with all my podcast guests, we've done this from start to finish. Every podcast, what we do is we ask you 10 rapid fire questions. I started this off as 10 rapid fire questions in 1 minute, but the problem is nobody does it in 1 minute because everyone has to justify their answers. So Jordan Sherman from the Immortals even challenged himself. He's like, I'm going to do this in a minute. I'm like, no, you're not. And after the first question, he stopped the timer. He's like, I'm not doing this in a minute. All right. So it's just random questions, but you could just, shout out what the first thing that comes to your head. So 10 questions. Number 1, favorite platform / console?
PC.
PC.
Oh, yeah.
Straight up PC. I like it. Favorite game of all time?
It feels very cliche, but we'll go Elder Scrolls Skyrim.
Elder Scrolls Skyrim. That was for the 360 version? I think it was only on 360, right?
I'm gonna get myself in trouble. So, first time I ever played Skyrim, I pirated it.
Hey, that was back in the pirate days, bro.
Yeah, but it was on PC. I only played Skyrim on PC. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, see, I've only ever played a little bit of it on 360. I didn't know it was a PC game as well.
I actually have played 3, 4, and 5, and I'm hoping they come out with 6. I played a lot of Bethesda titles.
Right.
3 was my first introduction to open world RPG, and I absolutely loved it. 4, everybody looked like potatoes, but I played it on PC as well. The only one I played exclusively on console, or I played mostly on console, was 3. And never after that, because I learned that I had console commands, there was mods that I could do. You just had more that you could do on PC, and I think that's goes back to question 1: what's my favorite platform? PC. There's just more you can do.
Right. Question 3: go-to snack during a gaming session?
Ooh. Cookies.
Oreos. Ooh, Oreos. That's a first. I haven't had that on the show yet. A lot of people are Cheez-Its or popcorn. Somebody said Swedish fish.
I want something that's not going to make my fingers feel like
greasy
slimy or gummy or like leave residue.
Yeah.
And Oreos, you just as I'm a fat kid at heart, I just grab and pop it in and go about my business.
That's the old Lupo thing, dude. How many double stuffs can you eat? He has a double stuff counter. I don't know if he still has it over there on YouTube now, but he used to have a double stuff counter.
Yeah, I don't know.
Favorite TV show / movie?
TV show is gonna be Scrubs.
Oh, I like Scrubs. I love Scrubs. Scrubs is a great. Now, last season of Scrubs didn't have to happen.
We don't talk about season 9.
No, we don't talk about
exist.
season 9. but I do love Scrubs. What about a movie?
Um, what movie can I watch over and over again? Um, honestly, My Neighbor Totoro. So, a Ghibli film.
Okay.
It's anime. It feels very like
Yeah.
very on brand for anime. But I watched it with my wife. It's probably one of my favorite Ghibli films.
Okay.
And if I was 10 years younger, I would have told you 300. But I think that I'm older. I'm like, there's no shame in enjoying animated films.
Right.
And the art style for all the Ghibli films is phenomenal. My wife's favorite one is Spirited Away.
300 was something different. 300 was something wild when it came out. Like I remember seeing it in theaters and Zack Snyder's animation for that was very wild, very out there, but very good. And then I will say I'm not a huge anime guy, but anime is done right. Any animes could be a movie. Let's just be straight on that one. But there's a lot to them over time. But some of the animation in anime just has to be right for me. And I can see how that would kind of catch your attention, though. If you like 300 that much, I can see how that would catch your attention.
Yeah, I remember seeing 300 in theaters as like a teenager. I was like, oh, this is amazing.
And we don't talk about the horrible sequel they made.
I don't know what you're talking about. That didn't happen. I don't know. I have no clue. I have no recollection of this.
What? There's a sequel?
Yeah.
And it's being touted right now on my Roku, which I was like, no, I'm not touching that thing.
No.
No, I saw it once. I don't need to see it again. Favorite pro team of a traditional sport?
College, or you said pro, so Atlanta Falcons.
Atlanta? What? The Dirty Birds?
Mm-hmm.
Are you from Atlanta?
No, so there's a backstory to this.
Okay, go for it.
So born and raised Southern Indiana.
Okay.
Went to Purdue.
Mhm.
So I tried to be a Colts fan, it just never stuck.
That makes sense.
And when I went to Purdue was traditionally bad at football.
Mhm.
So that never really stuck. One of my really good friends that I had met at Purdue was from Atlanta.
Okay.
And so he took me down there a few times, and
You caught an Atlanta Falcons game.
I've only been to one game, and actually was against Detroit up in Detroit.
Oh, really?
But I just kind of I was like, I need some teams that I want to latch onto.
Mhm.
I now know people that go to UGA. You know, let's see what it feels like to be a UGA fan. I was like, all right, this is good. And I was like, all right, so I'll start watching the Falcons. And as a Falcons fan, you learn to be sad a lot of times.
Yeah.
But I follow.
But at least you guys have made it to a Super Bowl.
True. We're a meme forever because of 28-3, but at least we've made it.
Yeah.
But for traditional sports, I follow a lot of Georgia sports. So Braves, Hawks, Falcons, and Bulldogs.
Wow, look at you. You just have teams all over the place this year. Because the Braves won a World Series. Georgia's going up against my Wolverines. Yeah, I mean, you got a good list there. Though
we
you're
have a lot of really good
but...
teams. Yeah, we have some good seasons, but the Georgia sports curse is hopefully broken because of Braves getting the World Series.
Yeah.
Hawks look pretty solid. Trae Young is really good, and John Collins is still a very good basketball player as well. Unfortunately, Georgia lost to Bama in the SEC title game, and if things work out the way that people expect them are going to be, it's going to be
Georgia. Bama,
and
to be honest with you, I don't think Bama shows up again like that, though.
I think
Georgia had an off day. I think the Bama that you'll see in the title game is going to be the Bama that played Auburn and struggled all season to begin with. Because when you look at all the games that Alabama played all season, they were not very good all season.
They weren't, and it was the concept that I was like, gods can bleed, right?
Where
they Florida played them really close. They lost to Texas A&M. They almost lost to Auburn. It's like, oh, this may be Georgia's year, and then Georgia loses, 42-24. I'm like, oh, awesome. Yeah. This is just Saban playing his assistants again.
Yep. But yeah, the Saban Final Four will always, we can't get away from Saban getting into the Final Four every year, but there'll be a year somewhere down the road. First car.
1992 Pontiac Grand Am.
Red,
$1,200. Rebuilt motor, could not push the gas pedal down without the entire car shaking violently. Put way too much money into a sound system in that car. And before the transmission went out, I lost second and third gear.
Ooh.
got $400 for salvage for it, and never pulled never pulled the $250 high
Oh
output alternator that I
no.
had put underneath the hood out. So I lost a ton of money on that car, but I had it for exactly a year. Good starter car,
Nice.
and good memories in the car. So
Yeah. Mine was a 1989 Ford Probe. Grandma hand me down. Grandma like her sports cars. Well, theoretical sports cars.
sports cars.
Yeah. Uh, number 8. Favorite guilty pleasure. So for me, I always have to kind of relay this out to the guys or anybody that I have on the podcast. Mine is like I grew up during the whole new metal. That's when we're getting to music. So Limp Bizkit, Korn, Eminem was a big thing. You weren't supposed to like boy groups, boy bands. I'm a huge boy band fan, man. I was a closet boy band fan. NSYNC, Backstreet Boys. Ooh, I could sing those songs all day. So now, it's, my favorite guilty pleasure. What's your favorite guilty pleasure?
Well, if we're talking music, I will listen to. I used to be a bit of a rap snob.
Yeah.
Because whenever I was in my early 20s, all I did was listen to nothing but rap music. So I was very critical of like who I listened to and why I listened to them. And then there comes times where I just like a new song comes out and I know it's inherently bad. It's not good,
Right.
but it will somehow show up in my top 5 for Spotify for the year because I'm like, oh, it's just really catchy.
Yeah.
I'm a sucker for really catchy pop songs as
Oh
well.
yeah, me too.
Like I don't care about the lyrics. It's all about the music
The
that I'm
music.
hearing. So everything else is just secondary.
Yep. That would be Bieber had me one on this year. I can't remember his big hit, but I was all about it. I was like, this is so catchy. I love it. But I was like,
Applause by Lady Gaga got me.
oh, there you go. That is a good one.
Yeah.
See, we know our guilty pleasures. Number 9. All right, this one's out of left field. This is a traditional Reddit question. Would you rather be attacked by one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
I know this question and I know how people answer all the time. So a horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses.
Yeah.
Because of my stature, I feel like the 100 duck-sized horses would be easier, just because they're maybe like what, this big?
Yeah,
They're like
they're not
maybe a
very big.
foot tall.
Yeah.
But there's 100 of them.
It's a lot
That's
of
a
ducks.
lot. That's
Yeah.
a lot of that's a lot of ducks.
Or a
like
lot of horses.
And there's just like this is like fisticuffs, barehanded.
You could run away. You could climb a tree. You could do whatever you want, brother.
I don't know. Let's take the horse-sized duck because ducks, I think, inherently aren't the most, and they're not geese, right? Like
Right.
they're not murder swans.
No.
So let's go with the one horse-sized duck.
See, that's a great little breakdown right there. A lot of people would never have come up with that one. Yeah, ducks aren't geese or swans, man. Like all you have to do is have a little bread. I'm sure that duck would be very happy, Yeah, he's not gonna come after you.
There you go.
Yeah, just have some bread. Last question, brother. Anywhere in the world, where are you going?
2 years ago, I would have said Japan, but the wife and I went there on our honeymoon.
I've had that that's probably the 85% answer that I've gotten from people. Even the high school esports team said Japan. But like,
it's great. It's amazing.
I want to go at some point.
So it depends on what you want out of it, right?
Right.
If you're an anime fan, if you have a very specific idea of what you think Japan should be,
Right.
Osaka is great.
Mm-hmm.
That is the city you want to go to. We did Osaka, we did Hiroshima, we did Miyajima, we did Kanazawa, we did Tokyo, and I think that was it. But we did not like Tokyo.
Really? Because of just the population and size?
There's nothing. It doesn't feel like it's anything special. It feels like it's just another big city.
Right.
Osaka is a city, but we found a lot of like weird back alleys. Like the first day we were there, we were just wandering down a back alley and there's a shrine, and it's like 7, 8 in the morning, and people are coming on their way to the work, making their offerings and doing their thing. And then there's a little old lady that's there tending the shrine the whole time. I was like, this is really cool.
Yeah.
You don't get like, there just feels like there was more culture there.
Right. Whereas Tokyo is just a big city. Yeah.
It just feels like it's a big city.
I got that vibe from Honolulu. We went to Hawaii 2 years ago, and Honolulu, and me and my wife will agree, it's cool to visit, but we stayed there 2 days and we were like, no. And then the next 5, we stayed just north on the beach in between North Beach and Honolulu, and it was fabulous. Like, if there was one space that I had to go that wasn't Northern Michigan, because I love the Four Seasons, Honolulu, and I mean Hawaii in general.
Yeah.
The
And I think
water's
you go-
85,
Oh,
75 at night, 90 sometimes during the day. I was like, this is heaven.
Yeah, I think you go to other countries. You don't go to them to see the big cities.
No,
You go to them to experience the culture.
culture. Yeah.
I know the wife and I at one point want to go to Ireland. That is kind of my traditional family background,
Right.
and I think there's a lot of really cool culture and history that we could take in there. So, a few years ago, the first place I would say would be Japan. We've been there. We want to go back, but it's a place I haven't been. It's going to be Ireland.
Ireland. Yeah, my Ireland is also my roots Irish and Czech. So Czechoslovakia is
Okay.
actually Czech Republic is more of me than the Irish, but I would love to go to the Czech Republic. There's not much there, but I would love to go see the motherland. I've heard Prague is great, but then again, I'm not a huge big city guy, so I don't know. We'll see. I'll have to venture over that way. But Europe would be definitely a huge thing
Oh yeah.
to check off our list as well. But thank you, Colin, for stepping in and talking hours upon hours. It was an hour and a half. You beat some of your predecessors. But Davenport _ esports on their Twitch, at DU _ esport for their Twitter. Colin, I thank you, brother, for being here and talking esports and your program with me. Best of luck this upcoming weekend to the JV team, and hopefully you can bring home a national title. And we'll have you back on here soon, brother. And I'll be down to visit campus, and we'll see everything that you guys have to offer down there. So I appreciate it again.
Yeah. Shoot me a message. We'll bring you down. We'll host you.
All right. Thank you, brother.
All right. All right.